Thomas Pynchon is one of the greatest authors of all time, but how did he get so good? How do you just wake up and write something like Gravity's Rainbow? Because I know that all of you guys have that dog inside of you, but how do you snatch it out and put it onto the page? Well, today we are going to hear from the man himself. We are going to hear from the chairman of the board, Thomas Pynchon, and today he is going to be dropping on us the most important piece of writing advice for all my writers out there, no matter if you are a beginner or if you are an expert. And if you, or I should say, if we want to create a literary renaissance, if we want to have new Thomas Pynchons running around, if we don't want to be stuck in this cultural wasteland of literature, then we are going to have to study the masters who came before us. We are going to have to stand on their shoulders. And that's what I do here on Write Conscious. I talk about the best books and authors of all time. And if you look at the playlist down below and scroll down and look at it, you will find dozens of videos on Pynchon's books, his life, and his philosophy towards so many different aspects of reality. And so if you guys want to join me on creating a literary renaissance, join me on this crusade of getting transformative literature back in the hands of the masses, then consider subscribing to the channel because, as you can tell, this momentum, this fire is not going to stop until it happens. And so, everyone, enough for me. You guys are here for Thomas Pynchon, so let's hear from him. Everybody gets told to write about what they know. The trouble with many of us is that at the earlier stages of life, we think that we know everything, or to put it more usefully, we are often unaware of the scope and structure of our ignorance. Ignorance is not just a blank space on a person's mental map. It has contours and coherence, and for all I know, rules of operation as well. So as a corollary to writing about what we know, maybe we should add getting familiar with our ignorance and the possibilities therein for ruining a good story. And Thomas Pynchon is 100% correct here, because that's the advice to beginners. What should I write? Well, write what you know. Well, what the hell do you know at the age of 20? And Pynchon saying this is so big, you guys, because Pynchon came out of the womb with a high IQ. Pynchon was raised to be great. Almost none of us were raised to be great. I'm just going to be honest here. Almost none of us attended an Ivy League university and studied under one of the other greatest writers of all time, Vladimir Nabokov. We were not prepped and primed by the time we were in our early 20s to start writing something like V, which is a masterpiece, which is mind-blowing that a random 25-year-old published this. And if you know what Pynchon knows, if you see how much random information he put into his first novel, or Gravity's Rainbow, which he wrote when he was in his 30s, this guy's a genius. This guy is really, really smart. And so let's look at our problem today. Well, our education system has gotten vastly worse. Kids are less educated, less happy, and less healthy every single year. And that trend isn't going to stop, everyone. I was there, public school teacher for the last 8 years. It's nosediving still. On top of that, all of our writers right now are going to the MIC-MFA factory degree programs, which they start around 23 years old. So we have a bunch of suburban kids who start university at 18, the kids with the good grades who want to be writers. They start their MFA at 23. They hang out with a bunch of other kids in their 20s with professors that have never written a masterpiece. They live in this safe little cocoon. Maybe they take mushrooms every once in a while. Ooh, I smoked weed. Ooh, I'm a stoner. And then they live off of their trust fund or get a creative writing job at a university and continue the cycle. And we expect them to be the next Tom Wolfe. We expect them to be the next Don DeLillo. We expect them to be the next Dostoevsky. And even the kids that raised themselves up and came from a hard life spend 8 years in a soft university program. Thomas Pynchon, for God's sake, was in the Navy. And so with our generation that never actually even had to live in the old world, never had to master any skills, any trades, Thomas Pynchon was an electrician. He worked for Boeing. He also was dedicated to writing at a very young age and was a genius. Almost every author behind me either had super traumatic things happen to them and they combined that with their genius, or they knew how to get good at something like writing because they already had gotten good and mastered something else. Thomas Pynchon was hanging around Bob Dylan and some of the more impactful cultural figures of the early 60s. When I was in my early 20s, I was hanging out with a bunch of random dudes who weren't doing anything, and they were cool. But playing video games, spending time on the internet, living in this isolated technological world isn't gathering experience. And so we first have a deficiency in having any experience in general, because once again, there are outlier cases, but a lot of the greatest authors of all time weren't recluses that never came out of their house. They weren't Spinoza or Kant. They were people who knew about the world, because that's what novels are. You are writing about the world. And if you want to be taken seriously and be authentic, you can't just astrally project from your bedroom and figure it all out. And this is why when you read modern writing, these grand epics, this ambition isn't there. That's why there's been this rise of the marginalized voice, someone just retelling a story about their upbringing or the place that they came from. But there's no real expansiveness or parody or metaphorical leaping or any of this stuff. And so first of all, we can't even write what we know, because what do we know? It's all just simulacra, delivered and derivative. And that plays into the second part, which is if you go out into the world, let's say you are one of these authors and you move out into the world and you've had all these life experiences, that's what sets up Pynchon's second part of the message. Because if you have experience, well, there's a dialect of ignorance there. There is a shadow side to all of that, the unrealized part of your individuation that you eventually have to scoop up and bring on the journey with you. And I use the Jungian term of individuation because Pynchon says that it's not just something in your mental map. It has contours and coherence and rules of operation. You have to systematically gather all of that so it doesn't ruin your story, because experience in general is already an illusion. Because when you're writing, and this has also been a problem with autofiction, which if you don't know what that means, it means just basically taking events from your life and dramatizing them in a very kind of minimal, nostalgic form. It's been a huge trend in writing for like the last 15 years. And it's not like a step up of Proust or like authors who did it good. It's definitely a step down. And if you are looking for books that are a step up of what you are reading right now, well, the Right Conscious Book Club is the dopest book club online. We read multiple books every single month and meet up and talk about them. It is hosted on Substack, the home of the literary renaissance. And if you join my book club, you get access to over 100 hours of content just like this. Plus, for all my writers out there, in the next few weeks, I'm going to be relaunching my free writing school, which helped thousands of authors find their first dozen readers a year ago, on Substack. It's about to go down, everybody. And so get your account ready now. You don't even have to subscribe to me. Obviously, if you want to join my paid subscription and support me, it means the world, and it helps me now that I've gone full time and I'm trying to make this dream a reality more than you guys know, literally. But my big dream, more than anything else, is to create this literary renaissance, is to help authors just like you find people to read their work. I have tested it for a year. I know it works, and we're going to relaunch it and make it bigger and better than ever. It's going to happen for free every single week for years to come, and I need you for the literary renaissance. And so if you want to follow my Substack, the link is down in the description below. Get on the list so you guys will know when the big launch is happening, and I will see you guys there. Thank you for the support, and let's hop back to the video. But when you try and do that, a lot of the time you're working with half memories, these faded things, these inherent, these modalities and pathways of thought that you think are normal, but in actuality may not be relatable at all. And when you actually look at that, none of it's transformative, right? If you just look at what you know and even your own journey of transformation, and if you try to apply that to this coming of age story or the characterization of someone in a novel, it's not going to work or have a lot of depth, because a transformative character has to psychically connect with us, the reader, without having to go through too much backstory. We've all read those stories before where we're just getting hit with all this backstory so we know why the big reveal, the big characterization later is supposed to be important. But the best authors almost never show that. Can draw us into a character and we resonate with them immediately. And there's almost no logic to the events. And Pynchon is an absolute master of that. Because if you think about your own journey, your big transformative moments, these big moments of individuation, a lot of the time they weren't that logical. It's usually this explosion of past events perfectly linking up with the present and all this stuff. And if you try to do a one-to-one transfer to the page or just try to change a couple little elements, it can fall off course really fast. Because if you could, we would have masterpieces everywhere. People have crazy stories. People have had crazy lives, but they can't write a compelling transformative novel or character. And there are plenty of people who have the writing skills to do it and still can't figure it out because they don't understand the shape, as Pynchon would call it, of their ignorance. And this is where real writers separate from everybody else, because yes, you can take experience from your own life, right? Of course, that's where you're getting a lot of this stuff from. That's where you listen to dialogue and you bring it over. But eventually, and this is partially why writers are so crazy and have a lot of problems, is that you have to view yourself as a character. You have to detach from your entire experience and see it as you would everybody else's. You have to overthink and examine in the fourth dimension from every single side, not just your own life, but all of your characters, all of your narrative arcs, all of your words, your sentence structure, your rhythm, all of this stuff. If you're trying to be a really, really good writer, it gets really meta really fast when you're in hour 4,000 of revision. And if you can't confront and look at your own problems, your own ignorances, which is conceptually the easiest thing to do because you experience, you understand the dialect and where everything is. If you can't look at that, then how the hell are we going to trust you? Or how the hell are you going to pull off creating a narrative with 20 characters where you're doing that and making it feel authentic? And the answer is that you can't. And the reason that people don't do this is that in life, you can walk through life not having to do this. You can get rich, you could get the good-looking wife or husband. You can do all of it and never actually have to do any deep individuation or confrontation of your own ignorance, because people naturally reject that concept because it's a painful thing to do. If everyone would love to individuate and be authentic beings of higher consciousness that understand their shadow and all this stuff, but it's a really hard process. Ask St. John of the Cross, who came up with the term, who talked about the dark night of the soul and all of that. Look what he had to go through. It's usually a really hard experience. And one of the most revealing things to me, it's the only reason you're listening to me talk to you right now, is that I had to confront my own ignorance. I had to grow as a speaker, as a writer, as a man, and so many different things to make this YouTube channel happen, to kick off the literary renaissance. And that's a pretty small deal, not to disparage myself, compared to what it would take to create some of these resonant, high-level artistic masterpieces. And you could tell there's especially with Pynchon's early work, he is attuned to the darkness. He is thinking and feeling and working on this almost different plane. It's funny, he knew Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was the same way. It was these men who were born into the old world, who didn't have all this technology, but were exposed to the world, who also practiced, who also had this dedication, and then surrounded themselves with all these people, all these other talented artists. That's why, if you look at the class of writers that was just born in the 1930s, it's insane. Cormac McCarthy, Philip Roth, Thomas Pynchon, Gene Wolfe, Margaret Atwood, John Updike, Don DeLillo. I could just go on and on. It's this huge class. And if you look at the late 20s and add them in too, it's a lot. If you take from 1928 to 1938, insane group. And if you look at all of their lives, they basically followed the same trajectory. Deeply experienced the old world, not the old world, this pre-technological world before the television and all this stuff, even before the radio and stuff became this massive deal. Then they had these most of them had, favorable upbringings with favorable parents, not all of them, and then were exposed to the world and then had access to people like Carl Jung, like Cormac McCarthy and Thomas Pynchon, Don DeLillo, huge fans of Carl Jung, Robert Bly, all these people. They learned about shadow work and had nothing really getting in their way. They got to see World War II, but not have to participate in it, but see the death and destruction, so many advantages. And if you're looking at a lot of their writing, they were masters of framing. And so if you look at a typical Thomas Pynchon novel, oh wait, everyone's paranoid and no one really knows all the truth. Everyone's ignorant. Whether we're talking about Oedipus Mass in The Crying of Lot 49, whether we're talking about Maxine and Bleeding Edge, whether we're even talking about Slothrop. We could just, Doc Sportel, I just go on and on about his characters. It's the system that he uses. But if you look at Cormac McCarthy, he does a lot of unreliable narration himself, or odd framing of novels. Philip Roth, another great from the 30s. Same thing. Don DeLillo, same thing. They came up under watching people like Vladimir Nabokov do this at a really high level. But the only way you were able to take characters through that, Do you think that you could write a masterpiece of a novel that has unreliable narration and different framings and very structured and elusive passive individuation and characterization, without having done some of that yourself? And the answer is obviously no. It's a lot more than just reading and studying it. When, once again, if everyone who has read a lot of books and just sat down and wrote, you know how many people have spent tens of thousands of hours writing and didn't write Underworld or didn't write Gravity's Rainbow? A lot. It's more than that. It's also about how you perceive and experience life and how you can bring that to the page. And a lot of that starts with looking at these dark parts of your soul. And with all the occult and dark stuff in Gravity's Rainbow with Blicero and all that, oh my God. And so on a practical level, think of it like this. Know-it-all logic bro writers can't succeed because you can't, if you force meaning, suddenly you're preaching. If you force events, everyone can tell. When I talk about transformative fiction, it's something that you can engineer, but it's through discovery. These characters have so many different layers and so many different paths in these masterpieces of novels I've been talking about that make it feel like you're on a journey with them of discovery. That's why it feels transformative when you read it, because you're going through this process with them. It's not just being handed to you. But if you know everything that's going to happen, it's going to fall flat. So many authors write these allegorical texts, and no one wants to read an allegory. Let's just be honest here. Allegorical stuff sucks. Rather, great transformative works are almost always an ecosystem. It's almost like open world GTA where like all this stuff is happening and that's what it feels like. You're playing this game. This freedom of association, all this possibility, if you can have it in a novel, can lead to mystery, can lead to intrigue, can make the contradictions and the metaphors and the twists hit a lot harder when they do happen. And so if you don't understand your own ignorances or the ignorant parts of your soul, then you're going to become one of these mouthpieces. You're going to become one of these authors who I have to constantly respond to comments about. Well, transformative, right? If I try to write transformatively, I'll just be preachy. Like, this is something that I'm going through right now with my poetry. I know how to write a strong imagistic poem about the desert. Like, I could write 20 tonight and they could all sound nice and they all could look nice on Instagram. But I've been lately trying to mine into my soul and figure out this alternative relationship that I know I have with the things I write about in my poetry to take it to the next level. And it's been really hard. It's actually been a lot of weird personal development. I hate to say that word, but it's led to total structural changes, me renewing how I view syntax and language and even my purpose of writing and all of this stuff. And my writing is worse than what it was. The new poems I'm writing are worse than the old ones, but I can see the bridge. I can see where this is all going. I'm like, okay. I came into my poetry with this perception and I kind of I've forced it, but there's a whole nother side and this game could go on forever. But like I said, as someone that isn't an expert yet, this is something that we all have to figure out. And so the best thing that you can do is not think that you know what to do. The best thing to do is think that even if I know myself, guys, I've taken psychedelics hundreds of times. I've kept a dream journal since I was 16. I've been a yoga teacher for 14 years. I could go on all day. Meditation practice, 14 years. I'm still existing in ignorance. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to locate it all. And the more I say, well, I've done all that, if I look at the list of accolades, the less good, less profound and experimental my writing becomes. And the more I detach from all these accomplishments, and we all have them. You could give your own list right now, and it's probably better and bigger than Joe Schmo or whoever, but detach from that, keep the work up, and let's go, everybody. Literary Renaissance. So if you guys want to support me in this channel, leave a like, leave a comment. Tell me what I got right. Tell me what I got wrong. Say hello. Second, you can join the book club that I talked about earlier. You can join my Substack where the literary renaissance is happening. I'm launching my free writing school there sometime this month or very early in December. Over the past year since I launched my first iteration of my free writing school, thousands of writers have published for the first time online and found people to read their work. If we are going to create a literary renaissance, I need you to come over and join it. You don't even have to join my page. Just do your own thing. Substack is the spot. Continue trying to get your stuff published elsewhere too. And last but not least, continue putting in the daily work. Read, write, integrate. Ad infinitum. We are going to have somebody break through. I can feel it. There's someone out there right now waiting to make it happen, and I can't wait for when it happens. And so, thank you for the support, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video.